The televised revolution. I am your facilitator. With the spring offensive that began on May 1st, after months of hibernation, Occupy Tampa and a number of other occupies throughout the country began an offensive of actions and so on and so forth, beginning with the general strike on May 1st. I would actually like to talk for a moment about the sort of impetus for a general strike, what a general strike is historically, and how that relates to what A, was done in New York and elsewhere, and B, what was done here in Tampa specifically. So if anybody would be interested in providing a little historical background on what constitutes a general strike, I would appreciate it at this time.
Well, I believe the general strike was something that in history didn't...
Grab a mic.
Sorry, this is what happens when you do live TV. I think they switched the date, didn't they? For May Day, yeah. And originally it went down because of the workers were striking for an 8-hour day in Chicago, and some of them got shot. So the May Day event is not what it's portrayed to be. They actually switched it, so. But May Day actions, what May Day actions can we talk about today?
Well, I'd also like to keep in mind that, and one of the concerns that I had when the prospect of a general strike was brought up is that we need to understand what a general strike is. It's a totalized shutdown of the entire system. It's every level of industry. It's a totally horizontal, totally vertical shutdown of a city or a region or an economy. So the prospects for a general strike from the very beginning were sort of dim. What we saw more than an actual general strike itself was almost like the phantom of a general strike or the shadow of a general strike. It was in the same way that in many senses, I see this movement as being a sort of dress rehearsal for what's to come and for the sort of bringing forth the different antagonisms that are hidden within our society right now and that coming to the surface, which they will later since the system as it is fundamentally unsustainable. I sort of saw this as a sort of dress rehearsal for that. I know that in New York we saw turnout numbers of like, what, 30,000, 40,000 people in the streets. There were a variety of other actions on the West Coast as well. Here in Tampa, though, obviously our numbers and our aspirations aren't quite to that level. I believe what we essentially did was a gardening project in West Tampa, in addition to a May Day concert and fundraiser that was put together. Would anyone care to talk about that?
The garden or the concert?
Either or.
Well, the garden we did nearby our encampment, and we just took some dirt, planted a lemon tree, a fig tree, various other vegetables, and it ties directly into why Occupy was originally founded. We've done a lot of gardening projects to help with food security because it's all about income inequality, and if you're poor you can't afford healthy food. So that's kind of like been one of our goals is to start gardens to community gardens just to free for all, so people can just go up and get easy access. And the concert. We had several bands perform. We also had Coalition of Immokalee Workers come and speak about who they are, and that was cool. We had them fundraise as well as the IWW.
And I believe there was some video of this, if I'm not mistaken. This was of the community garden by the camp. Am I correct? Yes.
Yes, it is. This is video I took a few weeks back.
It's also very important that we do this. Instead of asking, these big companies like Monsanto to change their ways for us, we're doing it ourselves, very grassroots. It's also going to be an educational project, get the whole community interested, eventually, get kids out here, and teach people how to do this on their own so that they can become independent of this system that we have. A lot of people say occupiers, we sit there and we ask for handouts. We're not doing that here. We're doing the opposite. We are building community efforts. This is for everyone. There's nothing self-interested about this. It's about incorporating everyone. If everyone helps out, everyone benefits.
What is the broader strategic idea or broader, I guess, transformational project behind community gardening? How does it relate to the sort of broader goals and tactics of Occupy in general?
I see gardening as empowerment. It's putting power back into the people to be, not reliant on conglomerate farming industries, big ag. It puts the power back into the hands of the people, and they can, grow their own food, and they can get away from this genetically modified stuff that they're buying on the grocery stores, which, we know there's a lot of things going on with Monsanto, with them trying to patent seeds, and they're suing a lot of farmers because when those seeds that are patented blow onto other farmers' lands, they end up suing them because they claim that those seeds belong to them and they didn't purchase them. So there's a big problem there. So I think it's great that we get out there in the community and start growing food for ourselves and become independent. Independent that we grow this food, we know where it's coming from, we know that we're not putting poisons and toxins in our bodies, and it just gives that self of empowerment, and when you have enough food for yourself and more, you can always give it to the, to the community.
Okay, we have another video ready to go here. It is of Nate, and it's more about the community gardening and so forth.
No. Okay, my name is Nathan Schwartz, and this kind of project, this beautification project, is important for various reasons. One, it immediately reaches out to the local community and can get them involved. People walk up and be like, "Oh, hey, what are you guys doing?" And you're doing something to directly impact their community. It also demonstrates the power of a small amount of people making a pretty dramatic change in their local environment in a very short amount of time. We've done quite a bit of work in just an hour and a half, so it's really good about that. And this general outreach, it does a lot of things pertaining to outreach to the local community and gets people involved, and it's very easy. It's something that people can pick up and just do. You don't really need to feel, there's no way to really feel excluded from this kind of project. So that's why I find it to be important.
What's the productivality of this? What do you...
Productivality? Well, I mean, the goal is to hopefully turn this into a garden, and then we can take that produce, whatever that may be, with the potatoes and whatnot, which are very efficient, and we can distribute them to the community. So they can directly put input into the creation process, as well as the growing process, as well as get the fruits of their labor. So it directly impact the fruit supply, which could actually, if done correctly, could impact food prices in the area, dropping food prices because demand is a little bit lower. So that's the practical application of doing something like this.
Educational value?
Educational value gets people talking to us. It's a way to get, human interaction is where education begins. So this is a way to get people directly talking to you about what you're doing and other projects that are maybe more politically involved than a project like this is. But it's all ways to get people into the educational process and learning about their environment and what's going on around them in their government and in their direct local community as well.
Some people have actually been closed down and taken to court and fined for growing food in their backyards and front yards throughout the United States. So one would see this probably as an act of civil disobedience.
Yeah, absolutely.
You want to touch on that?
I mean, civil disobedience is, in my opinion, one of the major benefits of that is finding laws in the legal system, in our laws, and pointing them out by breaking these laws. Not necessarily laws that are moral or laws that help keep society from turning into chaos, if some people would say that that's what would happen without law. But there are certain laws that are made and are interpreted differently or are used for oppressive purposes, and civil disobedience is a way to show the fault in these laws. And this is also one way that you can demonstrate how food is a basic right. It's a basic human right, and that's something you can't really put a law on. So fighting a law like this is one way to do it without any sort of violence, without any sort of real confrontation, except for if they choose to confront with you over what you are doing.
This camera, see?
Okay, and let's talk for a second about the legalities and so forth of gardening. I believe there are a number of instances where people were actually taken to court as a result of it.
Yeah, there was a guy in Georgia not long back that basically what happened was he was growing food and giving it away, and I think people were donating money to him. And the actual city came in and they actually took him to court, and he was fined $5,000. If you just Google, you know, man in Georgia fined for growing food and giving it away in his yard or something like that, you'll find that, you know, there should be an article or two that comes up. Also, there was a lady up in Michigan, I think it was. The city came in and she had a broken water main or something, and they tore up her front yard. And rather than have grass and stuff like that, she decided, you know what, this is going, I'm going to start growing food. So she did. She started growing vegetables and stuff. And somebody said something to the you know, the people that think that the authorities, and they took it to court, and she ended up winning her case. I think they dropped the charges. You know, civil disobedience. I mean.
Well, why do you suppose that these people are being fined for the gardening that they're doing? What kind of pattern do you see?
Because the government wants you to rely on, you know, government right from the federal level right down to the city level is bought and paid for. It's bought and paid for by big companies, big corporations, and the more that you know, if you're growing your own food and you become self-reliant on supermarkets and things like that, then you are not paying them money. They're not making money off you. You know, it's all part of the making money. A lot of the companies that are out there, they actually pay for legislation to be passed that might be against them because they've got all the big-time attorneys, you know, and they can fight this in court, and it's back pocket change to them if they break the laws, and it stops competition. It stops the people, you know, the likes of us, you know, buying some land and starting growing from food and, you know, being able to compete with them. So that's the whole idea. That's why they do it.
Right. Yeah, I guess, I mean, you could see this as sort of the process of, like, proletarianization. Like, you see capitalism throughout its history has basically taken what was once common and expropriated it and subjected it to the sort of the reign of the market and so on. And because it basically takes people from a state, essentially, of independence to a system in which they are, or rather it takes them from a state of non-possession, for instance, indigenous peoples and so forth, and puts them into a state of dispossession. And when you are dispossessed, you are basically fundamentally situated in a situation of lack, which with those who did not have any concept of property prior to it, they were not in a state of lack. It simply was not a part of their broader worldview or so and so forth. One interesting thing, I think you had some interesting thoughts, Tristan. Okay.
Can you talk about the picture?
The picture, that's another community garden that we started, not the one that we did on May Day. That's actually our second right there. And we used tires and mulch because it was once an alley that was covered in dirt and broken glass, and some really awful things were found in there. So we cleared out as much of the dirt as possible that was not healthy at all, covered it with mulch, cleaned it up, and we used tires to contain our garden and put good soil in. And tires, you know, a lot of people can't recycle them, or they have to pay to recycle them. So, you know, they're easy to get for free, and, you know, they keep your plants really warm. And, you know, that concrete there, people who had lived there for years had no idea it was under all the dirt and broken glass. We nailed up some hula hoops and jump ropes on the side so kids can come in, and you put up some tables and a sunshade so that it's inviting for the community to come in, and encourages them to come use it, so that it's just not just a garden, it's more of a center that will attract people to the garden.
Okay. You had a question, Tristan.
Oh, well, it was back to the general strike thing. Can you hear me? It was back to the general strike thing. You know, if you're inside the Occupy movement, you're aware of all these things going on, and if you're outside the Occupy movement, it doesn't really exist, mostly. And the general strike did not get much media attention.
Sorry.
Okay, I gotta put my face over where Jake's face
Essentially.
is. Hey. Anyway, the general strike, as far as anyone could tell, I think the system did just fine that day. Some friends of mine attempted to drop a banner reminding people not to go to work that day, but 20 seconds after they did that, an undercover cop pulled them over. My point was in the general strike, you know, flyers and things, a lot of them mentioned no housework, no work, no class, and some mentioned no housework, which gave me the idea that maybe, you know, the way that the general strike is supposed to work is you cut off the things that enable a system to work, and housework is something that doesn't get recognized, you know, as valuable work, but it enables. What's so funny? Okay. But it enables the system to work by. It's essential. It's an essential part of the system. So what other things are enabling the system to function that we haven't thought of yet? You know. And I don't know the answer to that question, but you should call us and answer that question so we can pull off the general strike next year. Which is another point. I don't think anyone was expecting any more from this than what we got, really. So there's no shame in it not, you know, being glamorous, huh? Oh, did I? Okay. No. So there's no shame in it not being as glamorous as we thought it was going to be, which means next year we can look forward to next year. You know what I mean? It's not like. Does that make sense? You know, like.
Well, we are a right-to-work state also. We're a right-to-work state, so a lot of people legally cannot strike, cannot take off. And it's also difficult to get, it's also a very indifferent state, it seems. It's hard to get people to be active. There's a small group of activists, and a lot of other people seem to expect a small group to do what everyone should be doing for the government as a whole, for our country as a whole.
In one sense, the fact that it's a right-to-work state makes it more difficult. In another sense, it makes it more relevant to do, you know.
Absolutely, absolutely. But if as a public employee, if you even talk about strike, you can get arrested.
What if a union like had a newsletter that mentioned all kinds of things going on in the world and happened to mention?
You could mention, you can't advocate, you could mention that other people are striking, but you can't in any way advocate a strike or a sick out or anything like that, for public employees anyway.
I think you should just quit.
Move back in with your parents.
Companies are just collection agencies for the government anyway, and they're just using this money to go and kill innocent women and children overseas. You know, 51% of your tax dollars are spent on war, and we're murdering you know, other people in foreign countries, and, you know, we're raping their resources, and the majority of people don't know that that's what's happening. We're actually, you know, in different countries because we're there for their resources. We're not there for anything else. There are no terrorists.
And on that note, we're going to take a short break. This is Occupy Tampa Television, Occupy Tampa TV, the televised revolution. I am your facilitator. We'll be right back after a short break.
Felix the cat, the facilitator.
It's also very important that we do this, you know, instead of asking, you know, these big companies like Monsanto to change their ways for us, we're doing it ourselves, you know, very grassroots. It's also going to be an educational project, get the whole community interested, eventually, get kids out here, and teach people how to do this on their own so that they can become independent of this system that we have. A lot of people say occupiers, we sit there and we ask for handouts. We're not doing that here. We're doing the opposite. We are building community efforts. This is for everyone. There's nothing self-interested about this. About incorporating everyone, because if everyone helps out, everyone benefits.
On live. Welcome back to the program. This is Occupy Tampa Television. I'm the facilitator.
Felix.
Okay, so the next thing that we have footage of is basically of the First Amendment retirement party, which was basically an event in commemoration of the free speech zone / event zone / clean zone, or whatever sort of Orwellian euphemism we want to put forward for it. Let's see, am I even mic'd? Let's see, and the image, could somebody describe what the image of this is here for me?
Well, what happened was with this free speech, what would they call it? The clean zone, yeah. The ordinance that they're trying to pass, or have passed kind of, for the clean zone down in Tampa for when the RNC comes, which, stops you from wearing a gas mask, and you can't carry a piece of string that's more than 6 inches long. Who knows what you're going to do with that. So we have this ordinance that we've been protesting, well, not so much protesting, but yeah, I guess you could call it protesting, going and talking to the city council about at their meetings, and it was evident that they were going to do this. So afterwards, there was a little party where we put together a constitution on a board and sat it in we have this huge leather chair. It's called the 1% chair because it's something out of a boardroom. We sat it in that, and we had some cake and some balloons, and I want Elizabeth to talk more about it, seeing as she was outside when I came, sat at the table.
Yeah, the cake and punch, I would like to thank Tampa Food Not Bombs for providing. Vegan cake, yeah. And we pretty much had a retirement party for it. We had little plates and cups that said, happy retirement, and it had a little mustache and some eyebrows and a little pin that said, let the games begin, in regards to retirement, which I thought was, fitting for what's coming. And we decided to use red balloons, tons and tons of red balloons, as we played the song 99 Red Balloons for several reasons. Obviously 99, and we're going to use balloons anyways. And the song is about, militarization. So we figured. Oh, I just got it. Yeah, we figured that was pretty fitting since that's the direction, Tampa's going come August. So we kind of played that, and then we had a dance party afterwards. We all had party hats and little noisemakers. Yeah. And we had people like our Mr. Facilitator here speak, on behalf in our little Man of the Hour.
Yeah, I guess the idea was just to do like a Man of the Hour sketch, and then basically kind of sort of wave goodbye to the First Amendment as it left the city. Yeah, I believe we have some video of it. I don't know if it's actually going to be played right now. But
do we have video of that?
It actually took a while to get off. We had to do some calculations with regard to balloon weight and to what actually helium can actually lift. But it did eventually get off the ground, unlike this television program that we're shooting right now.
By the way, I have a point of process. By the way,
you can give us a call at 813-977-6800.
None of us have mentioned so far that people need to call us and
I just did.
Encourage us to keep talking and talk about something yourself. I've got a question I'll pose to you at some point again. But anyway, the number's right there.
It's 813-977-6800. Give us a call.
Say that every 10
Please.
minutes maybe. I think that's how this thing works.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt you. You were in the middle of something.
No, I really wasn't in the middle of something, but perhaps you could talk a little bit about safer spaces, which has been an important and rather pressing issue in Occupy Tampa, and something I believe you've been involved in to a certain extent.
Yeah. Well, the safer space is kind of an image of what we want the rest of the world to be, I think. I was first introduced to the idea when I was at Occupy Toledo. We had a safer space policy up there, and it was really when when people brought up the safer space policy, it was like, wait, that's in violation of the safer space policy. That's really huge. That can't happen. You know what I mean? It was very fundamental to everything. It was like the Constitution almost. You know, people held it to heart. Safer space policy, I'll read it to you. It was in response to a bunch of embarrassing, unattractive fights that were going on in the camp.
So talk about safer spaces. What is it?
Read it for us.
Yeah, I myself am not actually too familiar with safer spaces. That's never been an area of particular study of mine, but perhaps somebody else.
Well, that would make sense because it really is intended to for more marginalized people that are treated as if they're not important and whose rights are often violated, and how their voices can be heard. I mean, our process is all about how marginalized voices can be heard, how all voices are part of the conversation, and safer spaces is to make sure that everyone, including victims of crime or abuse and so forth, can feel safe to express themselves in a public forum, in our public forum. Are you ready, Tristan?
I brought up the amendment to the safer space policy. Hold on.
Right, and I suppose, you know, as a white man, I would know nothing of oppression or any of the things to which...
You probably would have less of an idea if you look at Bell Hook's theory, margin to center. She says that people that live in the center of any culture, people that are at the height of the culture or are privileged by the culture, don't need to know the circumstances of other people's lives. They know the circumstances, they know how the system works. People who are marginalized in the society have to know both how the system works and how their own particular culture works.
We got a call. It's on line 4, so we're going to try to patch this through.
We're going live.
Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Hey.
Hey. You're on the air right now. Do you have anything useful to say?
I just have a question. I wanted to know what your thoughts were on the Federal Reserve Act of 1913.
The Federal Reserve Act of 1913.
Do explain, please.
I'm going to go off the air.
Oh, well, you gotta look it up then.
Okay. Does anybody know anything about the Federal Reserve Act of 1913?
I could speak to the Federal Reserve about what it is. Basically, originally, money had intrinsic value. So basically, you had dollar bills that would say on them silver certificate. And at any time, you could take those into a bank, and you could give them to the bank, and they would give you that monetary value in silver. So you could trade in all your FRNs, as they are now, Federal Reserve notes, into a bank, and they would give you silver for its worth. Today, money has no intrinsic value. It has no intrinsic value whatsoever. It's simply printed out of thin air. Money is debt, basically. So my question is, how can you pay a debt with a debt? Well, they made it so. What happens is, and why I say money is debt, is the government says to the Federal Reserve, we want $10 billion worth of money. So the government then basically writes them an IOU in Treasury bills and hands them over, and then through magic, ones and zeros are put into a computer system. It doesn't exist. I think it's like 3% of the actual money that's around today only actually exists in currency, you know, hard currency like paper and coins. The rest of it is all just, you know, it's fictitious. It's just ones and zeros on computer screens. So what they do is they put this money into a desired bank account that the government wishes them to put it into. And then if either one of us were allowed, you know, to go in and get a loan, and on the presumption of a loan being made, they can actually add, providing they keep 10% on reserve, they can actually add another 90% to that money, so that 10 billion now becomes 19 billion. And every time that you go and borrow money and go and put it into your bank account, through bookkeeping entry, that just, you know, keeps going on and on and on and on. So the money supply just keeps getting inflated. And that's one of the reasons that we're here where we're at today, because the money has become that inflated. The dollar is devalued that much. It's, you know, it's not worth anything. It has no intrinsic value whatsoever. It's not backed up by anything.
What gives silver its intrinsic value?
Well, the very fact that silver has an intrinsic value because you can actually use it for other things like teeth, jewelry, soldering, you know, different things, you know. So precious metals, I mean, like, if you look back, way back in history, you'll actually see that Indians used to trade. They trade anything, colored precious stone, well, not colored precious stones, but the intrinsic value is that somebody would, you know, wear this, would use this for something else, you know, feathers to make arrows with. You know, they would trade all kinds of things. So, like, food has an intrinsic value until it's, you know, until it's eaten.
That one I understand.
You know.
I'm gonna have to argue that precious metals have intrinsic value. I mean, it's very culture specific. I mean, like there are Western societies who have come across others that have, like, you know, lots of gold nearby, you know, in the natural environment, and they're just like, why do all these white people want this gold? It doesn't do anything. It's such a soft metal, you know. It doesn't have any intrinsic value as far as tool making or anything. That's really culturally specific. I'm gonna have to.
Yeah, I would actually.
Symbolic. They have symbolic value, not intrinsic value. Is
right.
the better way to word it.
Yeah, I would actually argue that these force relations and symbolic configurations behind money actually precede the use value that is attributed to it. And typically, what you'll see, particularly in Western systems, and particularly advanced civilizations, is that the symbolic order will derive a lot of its legitimacy from the apparent intrinsic qualities of whatever X property. Well, yeah, or, you know, for instance, I think there's a series of force and symbolic relations behind money, and gold and silver are really just sort of the apparent intrinsic value is used to reinforce those other relations. The same thing with, like, gender relations. The differences between the sexes are used to reinforce the symbolic differences that are manifest within society.
Value is a verb. That's just what I want to get in really quick. Value does not exist outside our heads, it exists inside our heads. Just a point of clarification.
Can you say that a bit slower?
Value, to value.
Can't hear you.
Think of value as a verb, not a adjective or noun. We value things. It's an act. It is in our heads. You know.
Like Elizabeth values that silver ring that's through her nose, right?
Neurotransmitters are the ultimate.
Okay, we're going to take a short break. This is Occupy Tampa TV, Occupy Tampa TV, the televised revolution. I am your facilitator. We'll be right back after a short break.
That was a terrible answer to this question.
Whether you want to or not.
Friday night, so.
All right, so what's going on here? Who's provided the food? Food Not Bombs? Okay, awesome.
All salvaged, saved, and donated. Food that's off the excesses of capitalism.
Things that would have otherwise gone to waste.
So what does Food Not Bombs do?
Food Not Bombs?
It feeds anyone who wants to come up and eat. Right here we have a weekly serving every Saturday, but, like, we can also go out to other places, like the Republican debates on USF. We went and fed anyone who was there,
But
protesting or otherwise.
But some people would say that it's illegal what you're doing.
It's illegal.
There's ordinances against this. What are your thoughts on that?
I personally think I don't speak for them, but I think it's bullshit.
Criminalizing,
meaning people.
It basically amounts to criminalizing poverty.
Yeah. It's not even poverty. It's anybody who's hungry. It's criminalizing hunger, which is absolutely ridiculous because that is every human's hungry. I don't care what walk of life comes. At one point in time, you're hungry. You want something in your stomach. If somebody's offering you food for free, you should be arrested for giving it to them. Whereas you can see, we're extremely sanitary about this. No one's allowed to touch the plates. No one's allowed to touch the food except for us. We wash everything. Everything clean and covered before it comes here. You know, we wash our hands. We had down there.
And do you mind stating your name for the camera?
Megan.
Megan.
Elizabeth.
Felix.
All right, good job.
The only reason.
Go ahead.
It's back to the illegal thing. The only reason we are able to do this is because we actually found a park that's private property that's allowing us to do this. Public parks can't come.
Scratch your noses.
And welcome back. What we just saw was a little bit of footage from a Food Not Bombs event. Perhaps some of the people involved in that could give us some thoughts on what Food Not Bombs is, what they have coming up, and so on.
All right, so let's talk about this, Elizabeth. You're involved with Food Not Bombs, and over in Orlando, well, all over the United States, people are feeding homeless people, which I personally don't think it's a crime, but obviously cities do. And they arrest people and they throw them in cages for not harming anybody. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, actually in Tampa, I guess we're only recently restarted here in Tampa after about 2 years because I wasn't a member at that time, but they were in a public park, Riverfront Park, I think, where we all got arrested for feeding people. And, you know, they were like, you know, what's the difference between this and a picnic? Or what if a kid comes up and has a birthday cake, you know? Just, you know, BS claims. The only reason we're feeding now is because we're in a private park. They can't kick us out. And also in Sarasota, another place, you know, here in Central Florida, they have a park, anti-homeless laws. You cannot go into the park with a backpack. You can't lay down in the park. You can't, like, sit in the park. It's ridiculous. You know, what's the point of even having the park at that point?
Well, yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe at one point the mayor of Orlando was actually referring to their the people in Food Not Bombs as food terrorists. I don't know if things have degenerated to that point here, but it is a fairly controversial organization in certain less enlightened sectors of society.
Yeah.
What is, and I believe there's going to be, during the RNC, is an event put together by Food Not Bombs.
Well, not technically during the RNC, but
My mistake.
the week before the RNC is the Food Not Bombs World Gathering, August 20th through the 26th. There will be workshops, teach-ins, events like concerts, poetry, speaking, you know, tons of cool stuff. And that will be in preparation for the RNC because all these people from various Food Not Bombs will be converging so that they can help to feed the protesters during the RNC so that they're not getting hungry out there on the streets.
Okay. And it looks like we have a photo of the West Tampa rally. I believe this was set up to address the problem that was potentially going to occur with regards to the housing projects there. Here's one image. I don't know exactly what. Now, that said image may or may not be representative of the event in question. Basically the event was designed to address what we heard were plans by the city to make way for new developments and basically repeat what they'd done in the past, which is basically put people out of their homes and replace it and try to essentially relocate them into sort of, like you could say, middle class or white areas. Studies have actually shown, there's been a sociological survey that we've discussed at Occupy Tampa that has basically indicated that such efforts are seldom successful and the results are mixed at best.
New Orleans. They did New Orleans.
Yeah.
There was a study done in Tampa. A public housing community was dismantled, and the people were put into higher income neighborhoods, 2 different levels of income, with the idea that they would somehow morph then into people who know more about money and know how to make money better. And what it really did was destroy the social structure of their lives. So when they were living in their community with people that they knew, they would help each other make ends meet. You knew when people were getting paid and people would cook food for each other. They would borrow things. They had what we used to consider neighborhoods where neighbors helped each other. And they lost all that social capital when they moved and were in fact looked down upon by their neighbors.
And yeah, and what is social? And basically, one of the things that's also key is to remember is that they're basically being moved to places where communities don't really exist, and there's kind of sort of mutual aid that develops almost by necessity within these sort of close-knit, lower-income communities are absent in these new areas, and the social practices of the people who live in these new areas just don't mesh with the people who were habituated differently.
And plus, these people grew up with each other. They've known each other literally sometimes for generations. And so they are a coherent community. And they break them up with the idea that they are going to do better when they're moved. And that's how they're sold the idea. But in fact, their communities are dismantled and they don't do better for the most part. The children become alienated. They said the one positive was that some of the young males didn't get in as much trouble. But at the same time, they lost all their social structure, and the young women really lost all their friendships.
I just want to add that I think it's absolutely criminal that there's 24 vacant houses per one homeless person. 24 vacant houses here in the United States per one homeless person. It's absolutely criminal that we're throwing families out on the streets and you know, not trying to work something out, some kind of plan. It's such an injustice.
Okay, we're gonna throw to a short break. This is Occupy Tampa TV, the televised revolution. I'm your facilitator. We will be right back after a short video. Stay with us.
Okay, state your name and spell it for me.
Susie Shannon, S-U-S-I-E-S-H-A-N-N-O-N.
Okay, what's your name?
Susie Shannon.
And why'd you occupy, Susie?
I occupy because I have been an activist for a long time, and I used to think that the government was somewhat responsive to things that I said and things that I cared about, and I don't think that's the truth any longer. I think the government responds only to money and not to citizens. I don't think they're in it. They don't think that they can get votes by acting properly. They think they don't need to act properly. They can just spend a lot of money on advertisements to make us think they're acting properly. But we're smarter than that. And I'm here because we're smarter than that. And it's time to take to the streets and let them know that we're not just going to sit home and make phone calls. We're on them 24/7.
What's your thoughts about Iran and the sanctions on Iran?
Well, I think that it's another farce. I mean, I think that it's another excuse to destroy a country, to bomb it back to the Stone Age like we did to Iraq, and to take their resources, because that's what we're about. We're resource thieves.
Do you believe that Iran has nuclear power and they're developing that to make bombs, or do you just believe that they're using it to make energy, if they in fact have it?
Well, I believe that they do have some nuclear technology. I believe, I mean, I'm not an expert in these things. I think that it's trumped up. So even if somewhere in the future they're going to build a bomb, they're not going to come anywhere near the capacity that the United States has with our however many bombs we have. I don't think that they're a threat to the United States.
All right, Ed, welcome back to the program. One of the things that's often sort of neglected, and is probably one of the less glamorous elements of the sort of Occupy movement, is dealing with these sort of internal problems that we face, which often stems from basically existing in a world where there are numerous people who are alienated, who are basically broken people, and trying to find ways to get them to, and not even just them, but most ordinary people trying to live together in a communal situation and readjusting their habits and so forth in order to exist in a more egalitarian fashion. And part of that, I believe, is the Safer Spaces policy, which you were going to discuss a little bit.
I only found the document here. So the Safer Space policy reads like this.
Closer.
The General Assembly consented to it on April 12th or the 11th. This is a living document to be amended as we learn by living with it. By safer space, we mean a welcoming, engaging, and supportive commons.
Close to the microphone.
Am I not talking into the microphone? An environment critical of the power structures that affect our everyday lives. An environment sensitive to power dynamics, behavior, and one's effect on others. An environment that strives to respect and understand survivors' specific needs. In order to help everyone feel free to be themselves and to prevent abuse and discrimination, we have listed some principles here. Respect people's physical and emotional boundaries. Do not become violent. Always get explicit verbal consent before touching someone or crossing boundaries. Demonstrate acceptance towards everyone's opinions, beliefs, differing states of being, and differing points of view. Take responsibility for your actions. Remember that your actions do have an effect on people, despite your intentions. Remain sensitive to how your language and behavior might offend others. Don't act creepy, sleazy, racist, ageist, sexist, heterosexist, cis-sexist, able-bodyist, classist, sizist, etc. Take responsibility for your own safety and get help if you need it. Look out for kids and animals at all times and try not to leave anything around
Can't hear you, Tristan.
that could endanger anyone. Keep drugs and alcohol away from the site. Put simply, what's wrong with, maybe you need a different mic? I mean, my mouth is right up to it. So do I start over now?
Couldn't hurt.
Okay.
we got time, so.
All right, I'm gonna do this again.
In summing this up, this safer spaces thing, basically it's like respect each other's like wishes, right? Not to be like harassed, not to be, messed with. Don't put your hands on them. Don't
Perpetuate oppression. Encourage, support, empower the disempowered. Right here, don't act creepy, sleazy, racist, ageist, sexist, heterosexist, cis-sexist, able-bodyist, classist, sizist, etc.
I think one of the things that we're dealing with is the process that we deal with is to make things as egalitarian as possible. But we all have a lot of different opinions, and we have strong opinions, and sometimes we disagree, and seriously, and we forget how to respect each other a lot of times when we disagree. So it has to be enforced, and it has to be, yeah, exactly. We have to learn how to hear each other. It doesn't necessarily come naturally, especially in this culture. We set ourselves up to argue with each other and to win arguments, as opposed to open our minds to each other's ideas.
Do you want to continue?
Well, all what Susie said, yeah, sure, I'll continue. I'm really awkward right now because of all that confusion just now. So, put simply, don't speak or behave in ways to perpetuate oppression. Any group or individual engaging in violence, including sexual violence and harassment, automatically exclude themselves from further participation. Ask anyone behaving in this manner to leave immediately. Everyone entering this space has a responsibility to uphold these values, know them, and take proactive steps to keep this a safer space. Those last two clauses are the issues we're having trouble, or we're having some trouble with recently.
Which last two clauses?
The part about making the violent people leave and taking proactive steps to prevent problems, as opposed to correcting problems after they happened.
Okay, and on that note, we're going to take a short break. This is Occupy Tampa TV, Occupy Tampa TV, the televised revolution. I am your facilitator. We will be right back after a short break. Stay with us.
evolve.
With this nation's per capita, there's no reason why anybody should go hungry. Worldwide, 4,000 children leave us because of hunger and because of starvation issues. So, we're trying to, empower people by, putting food in their hands. And we can also, there's plenty of land, plenty of space that we can feed, everyone without having to poison the earth and pollute our rivers and streams. There are ways to do this. But unfortunately, nobody's going to do it unless it's us. We the people have to make those efforts because, the big corporations, big ag, they're not going to do that for you. And especially in America, a lot of our health issues are caused by poor diet. There's no reason why we should be going with such junk crap food. And so by, making these gardens, we can get healthy food.
What's the movie Sunday?
I got it. All right, welcome back to the program. Welcome back to the program. If you're staying with us, then what is the matter with you? We're coming up to the top of the hour, and so now it's time to plug our stuff. I'm a part of the education work group, so I'm going to plug some of that stuff. We have every Sunday at 8 p.m. we have documentary screenings on a variety of different subjects. This Sunday, the subject was Codes of Gender, Identity, and Performance in Pop Culture. Basically, It was about the way that gender distinction manifests itself in advertising. I really felt like Vogue magazine just threw up on me for like an hour and a half, so that was a good time. Next week is actually the Koch brothers exposed. The 1% is at its very worst. Billionaire brothers bankroll a vast network of organizations that work to undermine the interests of the 99% on issues ranging from Social Security to the environment to civil rights. The 20th is Gasland, which is Josh Fox's recently infamous film about fracking, a miraculous source of energy that is somehow even more harmful than nuclear. And I believe he was actually recently arrested, basically filming a public meeting on the subject of fracking. After that, we basically have the, on the May 27th, we have The Century of the Self, which is an essay film about the concepts of how psychoanalysis were corrupted by oligarchs working to construct a compliant consumer society. The reason that I also have this avatar here was basically to plug something that's coming up on the June 10th, which is we're going to screen Chris Marker's The Case of the Grinning Cat, which is an essay film going through where it basically observed the phenomenon of the Iraq war protests in France which were concurrent with the appearance of a sort of cat avatar graffiti throughout Paris. Also tonight at Occupy Tampa, I believe after following the General Assembly, one person actually comes in and does economics lectures. So he'll be doing that this evening. On Thursdays, every Thursday at 8:30 p.m., we have Thursday Night Throwdown, which is strategy and theory discussion. On the 10th, we'll be discussing reformism versus radicalism, which has always been sort of a schism within this movement that is something that's worth discussing. On the 17th, we'll discuss the concept of commodity fetishism. On the 24th, we'll talk about the right to the city. And on the 31st, we'll be discussing alienation. And then this Wednesday, we actually have something coming up. In Charlotte, a coalition of activists around the Occupy movement will be going into a shareholder meeting for Bank of America, which is basically the closest thing to pure evil that we have in the banking sector in the United States right now. So in solidarity with those actions, actually I might not be able to do a call to action. Well, here's what's going to be happening. Anyway, this is we're not asking anybody to go, but what's going to be happening is I believe that Occupy Tampa will be around the Bank of America building, educating people about what it is that Bank of America does, how they do it, and what it is, how Bank of America fits into the broader economic and political landscape of the United States. So that's happening. I could say that as a point of interest. And with that, we're going to take a short break. Oh, unless you have something.
I have other things that are going on. Maybe I'm not really sure what Occupy Tampa has organized yet for this, but definitely look around the nation. May 18th, there's supposed to be a global laugh riot, which is kind of to jeer at all the G8, peeps running off to hide in Camp David and not holding it in Chicago anymore, I guess, because we scared them off. So what's our tactic? Do we pursue them or what? We're just going to laugh at them. So look around the nation for that. And May 27th at 4:30 p.m., we are having a World Gathering meeting at Voice of Freedom.
Okay.
If you're interested.
And with that, we are going to take yet another short break. This is Occupy Tampa TV, the televised revolution. I am your facilitator. We will be right back after a short break / video / whatever else we have to throw to. Stay with us.
What's your name and spell it for me?
My name is John Thomas, Johnthomas. And
why are you at Occupy Tampa?
I'm at Occupy Tampa because I got the call from Occupy in general back in October. Actually, I first came to light of it with the 700 arrest in New York. When I heard about Occupy Tampa, I came down to see what it was all about. The one thing that stood out to me was the call for global equality. I didn't really hear, and I don't really care about bank bailouts, corporate greed, political influence, because it's all just part of a corrupt system. For me personally, it's about much bigger things. Global equality to me means elimination of borders. Everybody getting along, living as one.
What do you think about the sanctions on Iran and the possible intervention of the U.S. going into Iran or Israel going into Iran?
It's all propaganda. I think we all know it's propaganda. And it's just, again, it's part of the division that keeps all of humanity apart and kind of fighting each other.
Welcome back to the program. If you're just joining us, you're either a masochist or you're waiting for whatever else is on this network following it. One other thing that will be occurring that bears mentioning, I believe this Saturday, Occupy the River will take place. I guess some people will occupy the river in various, I'm presuming in various forms of watercraft, houseboats, and whatever kayaks, canoes, whatever sort of like flotational device will keep you buoyant.
Check out the website.
There are details on the website. Check out occupytampa.com or facebook.com/occupytampa.
It's occupytampa.org.
Oh, .org?
Org.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
Org.
Org.
Sorry.
Okay. And I guess a couple of other events coming up. On June 2nd, there's a Bay Area Convergence and Gaslight. Would anybody care to talk about what will be happening?
Well, I'm not like really heading this or anything, so I only have a little bit of secondhand information. It's currently in the works. It's Tampa Bay area Occupy chapters. We're trying to get them to come together. I mean, there was an Occupy Florida event in the past. We're trying to focus on a more local one right at the moment on June 2nd in Gaslight Park, which is in downtown Tampa. And we hope to have more of these and have them in the various towns. Various Occupies can come and host those. So, yeah.
And I guess there's also a big point of focus for the movement right now is the NATO summit in Chicago. Typically, summits tend to draw a lot of things anyway, but NATO in particular after the Occupy movement, and particularly after the Obama administration moved the G8 summit for reasons completely unrelated to the numerous multitude of protesters that would likely swarm that place. Do we want to talk about what we see as the prospects for the NATO summit, and will it be different from what's come before? Or I know that there have been some really draconian measures taken by the city in Chicago to basically greet the incoming. I
don't think we really got much time to talk about this, but I think that basically with them moving it to Camp David, that there's obviously problems they fear. And I think it goes back to what Reverend Wright said, that Americans' chickens are coming home to roost.
I understand Occupy Baltimore is preparing actions surrounding Camp David, and they've closed down some public parks and so forth, but they're preparing for something. I just saw that today, so I don't really have any details, but there will be people in Baltimore.
Yeah. I would imagine that these summits will be important to watch as well, given that the RNC will be coming to Tampa and the DNC as well. And I suspect that it will really set the tone for what kind of measures that we can expect to be taken with regards to summit protests this year.
Can I just say something about the RNC?
Yeah, dude.
I just hope that nobody shows up, so they spent $50,000 for nothing. That would be great if we just stood on the side of the highway saying, RNC this way, protesters. That would be great if we just stayed away.
All right. And with that,
$50 million.
we can wrap up this program and close what we were never taking stack to begin with. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us today. If indeed,
direct your hate mail to.
Direct your hate mail to the.
Yeah, direct your hate mail to occupytampa.org. Tampa. T-A-M-P-A.
Tampa being the
Tampa.
redneck pronunciation of occupytampa.org. That's my material for today. Thank you for joining us. I don't know why you would next week, but in 2 weeks from now there should be another program, God willing. That's it.
Have a good night.